Hello and welcome to another episode of No Butts About It. I am Josh Butts. I am in my dining room in Indiana. Chus is in his basement in Pittsburgh with an ugly, ugly headband on. I don't know why he put that on, but we're going to talk about all the exciting games that happened this past weekend, along with a quarterback already getting benched one season after he was taken first overall in the NFL draft, and potential Tua Tagovailoa replacements after he goes on IR. All that and more next on No Butts About It. All righty, Chus. So, the AFC North is right where everyone expected it to be. Ravens and Bengals are 0-2. Browns are 1-1. And the Steelers are sitting atop the division at 2-0. And it's already been announced that Russell Wilson will not be starting in the Week 3 game, and that Justin Fields will still be the Week 3 starter after starting the first 2 weeks having decent performances, obviously getting the team to that 2-0 record. And now the question I'm beginning to ask, and I think other fans are beginning to ask as well, at what point does Justin Fields become the full-time starter? Does Russell Wilson, is he still the guy? Or have you guys bought into Justin Fields as your future?
Well, it's kind of interesting because before we even opened the show here, my dad, Tom, friend of the show, he's been on the show once last year. He actually called giving some information from what Steelers radio is saying over here, local radio. And apparently, I'm not saying this is all fans. So before anybody chops my head off in Pittsburgh, there are some fans that are calling for Russell Wilson now to be traded, considering how decent Justin Fields has looked. Now, with me, from what I've seen over the last two games, especially last game, I feel like there was more of a chance. I feel like there was a lot of circumstances with both games where I feel like there could have been probably more touchdowns had there not been penalties. There was a penalty on Van Jefferson that would have been a George Pickens touchdown. There was an offensive pass interference in the game before in week 1 where George Pickens got an offensive pass interference and he would have had a huge gain. There was a holding call that would have also gotten George Pickens a huge gain during the Broncos game as well. George Pickens is just getting screwed a lot. I feel bad for him. There's just a lot of these penalties that are happening, not necessarily because of George Pickens, but because of he'll make a play and there'll be a holding or illegal hands to the face or some random penalty. But the reason I bring all this up is because Justin Fields is showing a lot of strengths. And although he doesn't look like some of these other quarterbacks right now out in the NFL that are surprising, like, for example, I think Sam Darnold, we can easily say, is probably surprising in Minnesota, considering I didn't expect Sam Darnold's offense to actually be doing pretty well. And I mean, hey, I mean, they beat San Francisco. I mean, Brock Purdy, whenever he's without one all-star, he doesn't know what to do. So I don't know.
Whoa.
I'm just saying he doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know.
He's without more than one.
Okay. Well, now he's with
Christian McCaffrey's out.
Well, now he's without.
Debo got hurt.
Debo got hurt during the game. Yes, but I'm saying I'm just messing. Well, not really, but in the end, Minnesota has surprised. So there's some quarterbacks like Sam Darnold that are surprising a lot more than maybe a Justin Fields. But the thing is I think what Steelers fans do like about Fields is that he is showing a lot of signs of strength. I think that he is throwing those long, deep balls that Steelers fans have been wanting Kenny to do over the last 2 years that Kenny just really never did, except for like on 2 occasions. He's actually hitting his targets. He's having some beautiful throws that, unfortunately, 2 beautiful throws that George Pickens got called back because of penalties. I think it's not necessarily Fields' fault. I think it's the penalties that are getting called, and I'm not blaming the refs. I think that the offense should be cleaning up these penalties and shouldn't be doing as much nonsense. I mean, Broderick Jones got 3 penalties in a row or not even in a row, just 3 penalties in a drive. I don't remember how close together they were, but it cost us a lot in that game. And and literally, that game was a ridiculous final. It was terrible, but I think the point being is that this is still a very different offense than it was last year. And I think that the reason fans are buying into Fields is because he's winning games and he looks a lot better than Kenny Pickett. And I think that he has an arm in comparison to Kenny Pickett, where Kenny Pickett's making a little dumb mistakes. Fields actually runs the ball. He's a really big scrambler, and he still gets you that first down. The running backs don't look too bad. Some lanes are opening a lot more than they did last year. I think at the end of the day, I know a lot of people when we got Justin Fields were complaining, oh, he has a losing record. He's 10-22 all time or whatever his record was. Well, I think right now we just need somebody to win us games. I mean, they always say that weird slogan that defense wins championships. And even if our offense isn't the best in the world, our defense is really, really good. And I think that with that being said, if Justin Fields is just a game manager that gets us in the playoffs at 11-6 and the defense does the rest of the work, and who knows what happens after that, I don't care who you put in the freaking quarterback area. I mean, you had that in San Francisco. They put Jimmy Garoppolo in that offense. And I'm not saying Jimmy Garoppolo is a bad quarterback by any means, but he's no elite quarterback. Like, for example, you could name X, Y, and Z quarterbacks. You could say Patrick Mahomes. You could say Joe Burrow. You could say, I almost said Stroud. I feel like it's a little too soon to say that, but Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. You put somebody like that, it changes the entire complexion. But you threw in a Jimmy Garoppolo and he still took you to a Super Bowl. Now, granted, you lost the Super Bowl, but it still doesn't take away the fact that he took you there. And he was just nothing more, I feel like, than like kind of like a game manager. And I think Fields is showing more than what he's showing that he can do more, but I think we're just being restricted by penalties. And when it comes to Russell Wilson, I think it's the same situation as last year. I mean, look, you're not paying Russell Wilson a lot. You're paying him $1 million, like league minimum for a veteran quarterback. And you're really not losing anything like you are, like, for example, in Cleveland, where if you bench Deshaun Watson, he's still going to get a certain amount of money guaranteed. I mean, we're not really losing anything by keeping Russell Wilson on the bench. And with Justin Fields, more people are leaning towards Fields being the future rather than Wilson being the future, because Wilson's already in his late 30s, whereas Fields still has time to develop. And if we can get out of having to dealing with drafting a rookie and hoping that he pans out, then we might as well just roll with what we got. And if Justin Fields is at least winning us games, and even if he's not like the best in the world, I mean, listen, Seattle's got Geno Smith over there, and I'm not disrespecting Geno Smith because he's a great quarterback, but listen, he's no elite quarterback in comparison to what's in the league, but he's winning games. I mean, granted, their season, I believe they're 1-1. Are they 1-1? 0-2?
I think so. They lost in overtime to the Patriots, which clearly the Patriots are just a way better team than we all thought, and that's why the Bengals lost to them.
I mean, listen, I don't disagree with that. I actually think the Patriots are a pretty decent team. I think Mayo's kind of an interesting. He does some interesting schemes. So
Seahawks are actually 2-0. It looks like.
Oh no, the Patriots didn't. Yeah, Patriots didn't beat them in overtime. It was
and they beat the Broncos week 1. So
yeah. So like, and that being said, with Geno Smith, it's not like he's some generational quarterback. I mean, he was a backup for most of his career, but he panned out. And I think with the same thing with Justin Fields, I think point being is that, I mean, if he can win us games, then why not?
So this is Justin Fields' next gen passing chart here from this past week, and only 20 attempts. But something to point out is he doesn't have a ton of passes behind the line of scrimmage, which means they aren't doing a ton of screen passes. They're trusting him with the ball. He has a bunch of short throws, but he does have some nice throws out by the 20. And something we talked about last week was, hey, he doesn't have any passes across the middle. These are all sideline throws. Well, now there's probably 6 I'd put in the middle there, and most of them are completions. So Justin Fields is spreading the ball out more. Like you mentioned, not a ton of big-time throws. I think there's only one throw on there that's actually would have been considered a big-time throw, and it fell incomplete. I don't know the context of that throw. Maybe you do.
I don't remember.
Justin Fields is is putting the ball forward. He's trusting his arm to put it in some windows between the numbers. And that's what the Steelers needed coming out of a Matt Canada offense where everything was behind the line of scrimmage, jet sweeps, screen passes,
Yep.
maybe some quick slants, nothing too fancy. So I understand why Steelers fans really like seeing this guy, especially because he is putting up wins, or at least the team is winning while he is the quarterback.
Yeah, and I think with that also, I think people wanted Justin Fields. The reason that people are really admiring him, and I'm even admiring him, is because he's doing exactly what we as fans wanted Kenny Pickett to do, that Kenny Pickett did not. A scrambler, a fast guy that's going to get us those wins, still look good doing it, not looking too sloppy, actually making some plays happen and winning us games. And Kenny kind of did that towards the end of the season in 2022. But in 2023, last season, he really struggled in some of those big time games. And now I'm not saying that some of those games that we played against, for example, San Francisco, could have went any differently if you have somebody like Justin Fields in the offense, or if Justin Fields was in an offense with Matt Canada. I really don't believe that we would have done differently. But I think with Arthur Smith's offense and the way that Fields is working inside the offense, I think that it looks really good. And like from the outside perspective, I know a lot of people that aren't Steelers fans are probably wondering like, oh, well, 117 yards and a touchdown isn't that many. Well, like I said earlier, there are a lot of penalties that have been being called on the Steelers. And that's not because, I mean, some of them obviously, just like anything in any game at all, I feel like some of them are a little soft or a little questionable, but I feel like that goes for both sides of the ball. And it just so happened that the Steelers are getting cooked with these penalties, and some of which, multiple that I can think of, were one was a touchdown, one was a touchdown, and I think two were huge grabs that both got called back, all three got called back because of penalties that would have either resulted in a touchdown, a huge play, one which was like 25 yards that could have been, I think it put you on the 20-yard line. And I think the other one also put you on like the 8-yard line. And that was in week 1. And so, I mean, I think we're just getting screwed a lot with these penalties. I think if we can clean that up, I think Justin Fields I think we will score more than one touchdown. I know everyone's trolling about the idea we have one touchdown scored and 2 wins. But I mean, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter how you win. It just matters that you did win. But also, I think that we will score more touchdowns in this offense. I know some people are a little nervous, but I'm not nervous. I think the one thing is once we clean up the penalties, I think we're going to be even better than we are now.
How do you feel going up against the Chargers?
Well, this is exciting for me because this is going to be finally a home game. We haven't played at home yet. So we have played in Atlanta and we have played in Denver, both of which were pretty much home games as always. I mean, Pittsburgh fans, they travel very well. But point being is that with it being a home game, it's our home opener. I would like to think that we're going to do pretty well. I mean, obviously Jim Harbaugh has done really well in the fold so far. However, Justin Herbert is possibly going to be not playing in that game, which might give the Steelers a little bit of advantage on defense. However, I think it's going to probably be another defensive matchup because the Chargers defense has looked pretty decent from what I've seen. I don't follow Chargers often, but just from what I've gathered, they've looked pretty okay. And so I'm pretty confident going into that game. Like I said, it's going to be a home game, so it'll be kind of nice to see what Justin Fields does at home with the home crowd, not having to deal with Falcons or Broncos fans and whatnot. So it'll be really cool to see what he does at home in comparison to being away. And then, of course, the following week we go away again to Indy. So hopefully, this will really help being at home. So, but I would say I'm pretty confident. I mean, obviously, you still have those little nerves that something could go wrong, but I think we've held our own away, and I think that we'll hold our own home as well. Especially, and I'll feel even more confident if Herbert is not playing. But I obviously don't wish that Herbert is hurt because I do really like Justin Herbert, but I think I'd be more confident in playing against who's their backup. Do you know?
It's Easton Stick or Taylor Heineke. I would think Taylor Heineke would start over Easton Stick, but
I mean, Heineke is. I'd feel more confident with playing against Heineke. I mean, Heineke, I'm not downplaying him because he is a very skilled individual, but I would be more confident playing a Heineke offense than a Herbert offense, just because Herbert's a very well-rounded individual. But I feel like their offense still has a lot to work out too, because they got to really orchestrate how they're gonna. I mean, J.K. Dobbins looks great, but they got to really orchestrate how they're going to use Ladd McConkey, Joshua Palmer, and their wide receivers over there. Because is it Quentin Johnston? Is that he had a pretty big game, but Ladd McConkey, that's supposed to be the top wide receiver, didn't really get much targets. So.
But he's been looking promising.
He does look promising.
Chargers fans got something there with Ladd.
Oh, I love Ladd.
Fella.
Yeah, Captain Conk. I love that guy. I mean, I do. I think once they figure it out, it's just like any offense. I think once they figure it out, I think they can be cruising too. That's why I think, like, for Steelers fans, there's nothing to worry about when it comes to the offense right now. Now, if we did have a nice second wide receiver, nothing against Van Jefferson or anything like that, but if Roman Wilson was healthy in that rotation as well, I think the team would look very different. But Roman Wilson is still dealing with an ankle injury that is concerning because he is yet to play at all. So,
well, let's move on to the Indianapolis Colts, who were one of the most irritating teams to watch this week, for me at least, because they changed nothing. I was going to make a Colts reaction video, and I guess this is kind of going to end up being one. But the Indianapolis Colts did nothing that we talked about last week, and I think that's why they lost to the Packers, who were led not by Jordan Love, but by Malik Willis. Malik Willis, who he couldn't even get the start in Tennessee, who still, maybe Will Levis is the answer, but Brian Callahan's cussing out Will Levis on the sideline because he's making stupid mistakes. So
there's so much to talk about. Like the more that I speak, the more that you speak, the more that I'm like, oh man, I kind of want to touch on that. Like I would love to touch on that Will Levis situation too. But continue with your Colts thing, because that game, I wasn't watching that game, for the record, guys. I was watching Raiders and Ravens, which that's a whole other situation that's going on over in the AFC too.
I will grant the Colts that technically they did. I thought in the moment, actually, I just checked. I was wrong. They didn't even do this. I thought Jonathan Taylor got more touches. He didn't. He got 4 less than he did against the Texans. He only got 12. Only had 12 rushing attempts. He had 16 against the Texans. That's unacceptable. Then the Colts couldn't stop the run. And I know Josh Jacobs is a great running back. 2 years ago, he was the league leader in rushing yards. Fell back, regressed a little bit last season, but he's still a good running back. They couldn't stop him at all. Josh Jacobs had over 100 rushing yards in the first half. The Packers had a total of over 200 rushing yards as a team against the Indianapolis Colts. And we talked about this. We said, hey, this is a great opportunity to focus on the run defense because Malik Willis is going to be coming in. You know that the Packers probably aren't going to try to throw the ball a lot. And again, Malik Willis had some nice throws. He had some nice passes, but he didn't pass a whole lot. He used his legs a lot more for big plays. And Josh Jacobs had 32 attempts for 150 yards. That's what Jonathan Taylor's stat line should have looked like. If you cannot figure out how to score, then at least keep the ball away from the other team by running it. And I do not put this loss on Anthony Richardson. I do think Anthony Richardson needs more work. I saw a stat that shocked me. I didn't know this. Anthony Richardson has only started in 17 games since high school.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's why nothing against Anthony Richardson, but I always kind of said I think he was jumping the gun a little too soon. I think he was talented, but I always thought that he should have went that extra year. I don't remember. Did he get drafted as like a junior, or if he got? I don't remember when he got drafted, but he only played like 1 year of college ball like full time. And I just think that it would have worked out better for him if he played that last year. But that was just me. But who knows?
Well, he's got to, I mean, and again, it's not all on him, but he was still overthrowing some guys. He's got a powerful arm, but I can't believe this is not where I thought I'd be saying. Alec Pierce is their most trusted receiver when it comes to his hands.
And if you're looking for a waiver wire pickup this week, Alec Pierce is only rostered in like 4% of leagues, and on top of that, he's projected like 6.9 points. So like if you scroll down a little bit, you'll find him. Most people aren't going to be looking if they're casuals. So, but continue, Josh.
Yeah. No, Alec Pierce legitimately has the most shirt hands on the team right now. Michael Pittman Jr. had some drops. And again, Anthony Richardson was trying to force the ball to him. And A.D. Mitchell, who I was super excited to watch. He was one of my favorite add-ons to any team this offseason. Had some drops. And it was irritating rooting for the Colts, wanting them to win that game, because it was the same exact thing. Zaire Franklin couldn't tackle. The defensive line couldn't tackle. And then I have to go watch the Bengals, who also can't tackle. So I'm watching it twice in two different uniforms. And, like, Colts fans, like, I get it. I get your frustration. I'm not completely sold on Anthony Richardson. I'm not saying he's not the answer right now, but he's got to figure it out. We all know he's got the big booming arm. He threw a Hail Mary pass that thing had to have traveled 70 to 80 air yards. That was a beautiful throw. And it didn't get caught, but it was a beautiful throw. Anthony, we know you have the arm, but you don't always have to go 100%. Sometimes you just need to throw a 10-yard, not a lob, but just a quick little something. Hit the guy in the numbers, which you did hit A.D. Mitchell in the numbers, right between the 1 and 0, and he dropped. But
and golly, just get Jonathan, get Taylor involved too, man. Like, come on.
Yeah. Jonathan Taylor needs the ball. Jonathan Taylor has to get the ball. That's not even up for discussion. Like,
do little dumb check down passes. I was gonna say, do dumb check down passes. Do screens with him. Just do stuff with him. Like, yeah, you don't have to feed him the ball necessarily. Like, oh yeah, here, run the ball. Just get him involved more. I mean, I feel like although he's on the field for all these plays, I feel like, and listen, I didn't watch the game like Josh did, and Josh is complaining about it, but like just from like, and I know everyone like hates when I do this, but like from a fantasy football perspective, if you're watching the football logs as it's going on, you're very disappointed with how Jonathan Taylor is producing in comparison to some of these other running backs that, presumably you drafted instead, or that you could have drafted instead, and you picked Jonathan Taylor. But from a different perspective, players like Jonathan Taylor should be lighting it up. We talked about this on the show over the summer, where Jonathan Taylor, this is the first season where he's not holding out, he's not injured coming off of the offseason. Like, he is ready to go. He is ready. You used him more 2-3 years ago, and he kept getting hurt. Now you have more of I don't know how balanced of an offense you could say. I don't know. Josh would probably be able to say that more, but I mean, you have Alec Pierce and Michael Pittman Jr. You got Jonathan Taylor in the backfield. I mean, you can work with what you got. I mean, I don't know. I'm just spewing, but like, I get him the ball, man. Just get him the ball. But sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your.
No, I mean, it's true. Like, there was nothing really shocking about what I will say is Matt LaFleur did a very good job of working the wide receivers in with jet sweeps and screen passes and, adjusting for Malik Willis. That was done very well. And Jaden Reed had some nice plays because of that. But there wasn't anything where I was like, oh my God, the Colts could have never planned for this. Like, if Malik Willis would have come out and thrown 50 passes for like 300 yards somehow, I would have been like, okay, no one expected that.
Yeah, that's Malik Willis' insanity game would be crazy.
But that's not what happened. They gave the ball to Josh Jacobs. He ran the ball more. They held on to the ball. I think going into the half, 30 minutes total. The Packers had the ball for 20 minutes of the first half.
Mm-hmm.
Over 20 minutes, and then the Colts had it for like 6. That's not even a quarter. You can't do that.
No.
And they did the same thing against the Texans. And that's why they lost. I know the Texans are the better team and all that. But the Colts could have won that game. And they should have beat the Packers. So, the Colts are playing. Let me make sure I get this right. The Colts are playing the Bears this week. You have to give Jonathan Taylor the ball. Shane Steichen, if you are out there, give Jonathan Taylor the ball. Gus Bradley. Create something to stop the turnovers. I don't know if Caleb Williams will have Keenan Allen this week. I don't know if he'll have Rome Odunze this week. But Caleb Williams is a rookie quarterback. I don't care if he is supposedly the next Patrick Mahomes. There have been teams that have stopped him. Last week, the Texans stopped him.
I mean, he also he played not good yesterday.
Right.
And so, I mean, I don't think basically what I'm implying is that they can win. I mean, homie had 174 yards yesterday and 2 interceptions. I mean, you can stop him. It's not like this guy is coming out like Jaden Daniels or, Stroud even last year. I mean, I feel like you guys can stop him.
The Colts have to win. The Colts have to beat the Bears. And I think the Bears are very much improved. But there's just no excuse with this offense to go 0-3. I know the defense isn't the best. DeForest Buckner is going to be out, I believe, because of his ankle injury. He's out this week, so that is a big loss. But the Colts have the guys to win these games. The Colts have the guys to take control of the games. And I don't know if Michael Pittman Jr. and A.D. Mitchell just aren't locked in yet, but they need to get locked in. They need to figure it out. And Josh Downs, hope he's healthy soon. But Alec Pierce is your best option right now, which is rough.
And AR right now does have more interceptions than he does touchdowns, which is a very unfortunate circumstance. I mean, over the 2 games, he had 3 on Sunday. He had 1 last week against Houston. He had 2 touchdowns against Houston, had 1 touchdown thrown against Green Bay. So it puts him at 3 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Don't know if he rushed for any, but that's based on throwing.
I can't remember if he rushed.
It doesn't really matter. I just know that he can sometimes run too, but more or less, yeah. I mean, that's a circumstance over there in Indy. You gotta pick up that win this week. That's all I'm gonna say for you Colts fans out there.
Yeah, it's just annoying because they don't it's not like they don't have the talent. They have the talent,
and they don't listen to no buts about it. They don't listen. So
that's the problem. That is a big issue. They should have, if they would have watched No Buts About It, they would have known what the Packers' game plan was, because we laid it out for them because it was fairly obvious, and I think most people could have figured it out. But I digress. Did you want to talk about Baltimore versus the Raiders real quick?
Yeah, I'll briefly touch on it just because neither of those teams are teams that we really touch on unless we're playing Baltimore or the Raiders. It's not really in our well, I don't know what you would call it. I guess like our circle of teams that we talk about. But I did watch the game before the Steelers and Broncos game came on at 4:25. It was our 1:00 game that I got. Similar to Josh, he had the Colts game, correct? Was that the 1:00 game that you were able to watch instead? So the 1:00 game, since both of our games were at 4:25, we got to watch those games to start. So I watched the Raiders and the Ravens game. And honestly, I think something that needs to be worth noting is that Max Crosby is so underrated as a player. He is such a great defensive player for the Raiders and just for the NFL in general that I feel like he is so underappreciated when it comes to everybody else in the league. And I think that he needs to get his dozen roses at some point because dude was all over the field in Baltimore. I mean, he was just making plays happen. He had sacks. He was a menace, more or less, especially for Lamar. And I think his presence was shown enough that it got the Raiders ahead to win that game in the last few minutes of the game. And another guy that I wanted to highlight was he's a former Steeler, and I didn't even know he played for the Raiders at this point in time. But Robert Spillane also had an interception in that game. He also had a huge, big swat at one point against Lamar. That was also a really big play that really helped the drive come to a stalling halt in Baltimore. And I really think it's just interesting because Brock Bowers looked really good from the Raiders' perspective. I think they really, I mean, you expected Brock Bowers to be a really good tight end, and sure enough, he is going to be a really good tight end. He's making those big plays and stuff. Gardner Minshew still looks a little wonky at times. I mean, but that's what you get with Minshew. You never really get complete consistency with him. I love Minshew. I mean, that's why I wear headbands, is because of him from 2019. But you always aren't too sure. And with Baltimore, I think they looked a little cheesed. I don't know. I think they were looking a little questionable out there. I mean, I think they were fine, but I felt like at moments it was either they could not handle the Raiders defense, and maybe the Raiders defense is a lot better than we're assuming, or Baltimore is struggling a little bit, because this is a home game. This wasn't like they were playing in Las Vegas. They lost in Baltimore. And I don't know, did Baltimore play at home week 1? I don't even remember who did Baltimore play week 1. They played
They played Kansas City
and Kansas City. Yeah. So this was their home.
They lost by a toe.
Yeah. And this is another game where they lost by a toe. And that's concerning for Baltimore fans. And I know that I'm a Steelers fan wearing a Kansas City Chiefs headband, which, by the way, I'm wearing this headband just because I'm taunting Josh because I play him in fantasy football this week. So that's the only reason why I'm wearing it. I actually was going to wear my Cardinals jersey, but I did not. But because, I mean, it was a cool win, but nonetheless, but the reason that I would be worried in a sense with Baltimore, because if you're a fan, you're noticing that now back-to-back games, Kansas City, okay, it's Kansas City. They're a good team, and they're going to only continue to build their dynasty. But somebody like Las Vegas that doesn't have everything figured out. I mean, once again, Devontae Adams is a dog. I mean, he is. I mean, every time that there was a third down or some sort of drive, always it was either Bowers or, I swear, Devontae Adams. It was always those two guys. Madison, I think, had a touchdown too, but it was like one rush for 4 yards and a touchdown. He had nothing in the game other than that one goal line touchdown. But if I'm a Ravens fan, I'd be a little concerned, because I don't remember exactly what team, but I know there's been teams in the past that have struggled with closing out games. And this is now 2 games in a row where you've lost presumably by 1 possession, where you probably could have won and are supposedly projected to win at certain circumstances. Like you definitely should have beaten the Raiders, and the Kansas City Chiefs game was a little rough, but I mean, it's an unfortunate circumstance, but it's still one of those things where it's like you should have been able to win some of those games. So I'd be concerned a little bit from that aspect. You guys still have a good team, but Harbaugh needs to figure out what's going wrong, because you're not closing games. And that's just a little concerning.
And this week, we didn't see a ton of production from Mark Andrews, but we saw more Mark Andrews than Isaiah Likely.
Yes, we did. I was going to tweet about that, because
supports our theory that they're going to bounce back.
Yeah, I was going to say, that definitely helps. So,
but okay, so was the reason that the Ravens lost though just because Max Crosby was all over Lamar, or
I wouldn't say that. I feel like, I mean, from what I saw, I feel like certain plays just weren't producing. Like I said, I think the defense was doing really well out there. I mean, there might be a Baltimore Ravens fan or Raiders fan that might be calling something else. I mean, if you look at the stat line, I mean, I gotta like pull up these stats real quick, because I mean, like, obviously I saw certain points of the games, and obviously I missed some other ones. It's not my team, but I watched it to the best of my ability. But I mean, Lamar didn't look terrible. I mean, he had 247 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception. He wasn't rushing that much. He didn't really do a whole lot, but his presence was there. I mean, I feel like at times they're still trying to figure out their running back situation, because I mean, nothing against their running backs, but I mean, like, they're running a lot with like Justice Hill in certain circumstances, and you're just a little unsure of what they're doing. And I genuinely think, just based off what I see, I mean, Gardner Minshew didn't even do that well either. He had like right around the same stat line, 276 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception. I think personally, it was just a crazy defensive game. And that's why I highlighted Max Crosby and Robert Spillane. I feel like they were two big key defensive pieces in that against that Ravens offense. And that's why I said give Max Crosby his roses, because there's only certain players that can really take over the defense that add that much pressure. And I think Max Crosby is one of them that nobody really talks about. But the reason I was mentioning this is because I was talking to a couple of my friends about it, and we were trying to figure out, and this could be always a discussion that we have at some point down the road, Josh, on the show or just in general. But it's always interesting to see there's only certain defensive players that can really almost quote unquote take over the game and make the plays happen to the extent where they do. And one of the players that I always like to highlight, obviously, is TJ Watt, because if it's not him getting the sack, it's him pressuring the guy enough to cause an incomplete or an interception. So that's why TJ Watt's such a force to be reckoned with. And I think Max Crosby is just had his crazy breakout game. But I think that also might come to the O-line. I feel like, did we talk about the O-line with Baltimore? I feel like their O-line's kind of not all there right now. It might be struggling.
I talked about them a little bit last week. I don't think they're that good. I think they're struggling. I wasn't super impressed by them against the Chiefs. And again, they're a lot of new guys on that O-line, or at least new to each other. Mm-hmm. And that could be part of it. They just don't have that chemistry. But right now, that O-line isn't where I think Baltimore would like it to be.
Yeah, and I think with that, because I think Max Crosby is like I said, I love Max Crosby, but I think in certain circumstances, what sets aside like a really good O-line and certain circumstances like this is like, you could see that Lamar was getting pressure. You could see that some of these plays were happening and you're like, wow, that was a great play. And maybe it wasn't formulated by Max Crosby or Robert Spillane or any of these guys, but it always just seemed like the O-line was struggling. And I just didn't really understand what was happening. Like I said, Mark Andrews was getting more involved, likely still had some of his touches as well. But I mean, obviously, I don't know. Even like Derrick Henry, I don't remember how well he did like fantasy percentage wise this week, because I always do like a nice comparison. But like I said, I don't remember hearing too much of his name. I know Zay Flowers got a touchdown. I think Derrick Henry did also get a touchdown as well. But I mean, compared to the week before with Derrick Henry, with Kansas City, I mean, he's really in the same range with like the same amount of yards. He's had under 100 yards of offense against Kansas City. And then in this Raiders game, I think he barely was under 100 yards as well. And that included rushing and receiving. So I think that might really fall back on the O-line, Josh. I genuinely think that the conversation we had last week is the O-line, because Derrick Henry, we've also seen as an offensive player take over games where it's just him. He hasn't done that yet. I mean, he really hasn't. I mean, I really thought it would be different, but I don't know.
We'll see. Well, I guess I can only push off the inevitable for so long. It's time to talk about the Cincinnati Bengals against the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, I'm just going to put this out here right now. In my headcanon, the Bengals won this game. I know the history books don't care, and I'm not big on morale victories and all that, but
okay.
The Bengals outplayed, objectively speaking, the Bengals outplayed the Kansas City Chiefs. And I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, the refs, won the game for the Chiefs. There were some questionable calls, but I think they went both ways for the most part. Timing was a little bit off on the PI, obviously, with Deja and Anthony, and you can argue that all day. But there was also a play earlier where Cam Taylor-Britt kind of laid out, I think it was Xavier Worthy. So maybe, but I digress. The thing is, the Bengals had this game won. They just lost it on things that they can control. For example, if Joe Burrow doesn't fumble and the Chiefs don't get that scoop and score, the field goal doesn't matter. I mean, maybe the Chiefs do end up scoring somehow still, but we know for a fact, we can say objectively, Joe Burrow fumbled, Chiefs picked it up, and they scored points off of that. Evan McPherson misses the field goal. I don't think that's as big of a deal because I don't think the Chiefs go for two later on if Evan McPherson, or not the field goal, but the PAT, I believe it was. I don't think the Chiefs go for 2 if he doesn't miss that. So that's kind of a wash in my opinion. Jamar Chase has to stay calm. And I don't know what the refs said to him. There's rumors about lip reading and trying to figure out what fans think the ref said to Jamar Chase. But when Joe Burrow is having to come up behind you and grab you and drag you away from the ref, that's when it's too far. And the ref may be he may be some 10-ply toilet paper out there. He may be a little super soft, but you still can't be doing that. You can't be getting in the ref's face. Again, don't know full context of the situation. I know Jamar thought that was a hip drop tackle, and we talked about this during the offseason. No one knows what a hip drop tackle is, so now the players are confused, and the owners are confused, and Joe Mixon got hurt on what he thought was a hip drop tackle for the Texans. Didn't get called. Nobody knows. So it's not fair to the fans, it's not fair to the teams, and it's not fair to the players when you implement a rule, are super unclear about it, and then players think they should get called for it, and then they don't get the call. Patrick Mahomes did not play well. Travis Kelce did not play well. Patrick Mahomes had 3 interceptions.
Kelsey's been non-existent.
Patrick Mahomes had 2 interceptions that counted. He had a third one that was from DJ Turner picked him off. And then there was, again, in my opinion, very soft illegal touching penalty that only got called when Travis Kelce went over and was like, did the whole shrug thing and couldn't believe it didn't get called. And then all of a sudden it got called, wiped the interception off. Cam Taylor-Britt was talking all week saying Xavier Worthy can just run fast and run straight. That was a bit worrisome, but you know what? Cam Taylor-Britt backed it up, and he had a nice, if not the play of the year, one of the plays of the year, one-handed interception off Patrick Mahomes. If you haven't seen that yet, look it up. It is a beauty. It looks like the Odell catch. But the Bengals had this game. They owned this game. This was their game to win, and that is with the run defense being atrocious. Sheldon Rankins and B.J. Hill both getting injured. There's all sorts of stuff we can look at here, and I am going to look at this a little bit more here later in the week. But Deja Anthony was on Travis Kelce, and he locked him up. Rookie 7th rounder. I know having him out there against Travis Kelce is crazy, and if you go and look at his PFF grade, it's going to be bad. I asked the guy to explain that to me, and he said it's because of the 2 penalties that were called against him. One was the illegal touching. The other was that questionable PI at the end of the game. I do think there are legitimate concerns about Jordan Battle not being out there. Jordan Battle had only 1 or 2 snaps, which is insane to me.
Who's playing in his place?
Von Bell right now.
Oh, okay.
But I would have liked to see on that final play. I get why they rushed 3. I had some questions about the personnel. They had Zach Carter out there instead of Sam Hubbard, which I know Sam Hubbard isn't a big pass rusher, but I think he's better than Zach Carter. You want him out there. I would have put Jordan Battle out there in place of either Deja Anthony or maybe even Von Bell. And I'm a big Von Bell guy, but I think Battle earned the starting spot last year. I think that's why a lot of Bengals fans are annoyed, is because we're kind of at the same point we were last year. And it feels like we keep going through this cycle where Zach Taylor has super conservative play calling. Joe Burrow doesn't look the same. We're questioning why certain players aren't out there. Last year it was Jordan Battle. This year it's still Jordan Battle. We're also questioning Jermaine Burton. Why is Jermaine Burton out there? At least explain it to us, because Trent Irwin's out there, and he got hit in the face by a ball in the end zone and didn't catch it. Meanwhile, they give Jermaine Burton 1 target, and it goes for 47 yards. So every time we've seen Jermaine Burton, I don't care if you just send him on a go route. Take a corner and safety with him. But you've got to get some help out there because T. Higgins isn't in right now. Yoshi had 2 touchdowns. Yoshi looked fine in my opinion.
Yeah.
But Jermaine Burton needs to be out there. Jamar Chase needs help. T. Higgins coming back will be a big help, but you're not going to have T. Higgins long term. You cannot keep relying on T. Higgins. The Chiefs should not have won this game. And it's similar to the Colts game. The Packers should not have won that game. But I do think that the Cincinnati Bengals heavily improved from last week, and now they get to go play the Commanders, and they should win that game. I'm going to do more analysis. We have more to talk about on this show, so I don't want to talk about them for too long because I am going to talk about them later. The Bengals did sign defensive tackle Lawrence Guy, who is a 14-year veteran in the NFL. He's played for the Colts, the Chargers, the Ravens, the Patriots. Now he's the Bengals. 35 years old. Have no idea if he's any good. But you know what? He's the only true nose tackle we have on the team now. And he is already the team's best run defender on the defensive line. So we'll look more into that throughout the week. I'll talk about that more. Chus, you have a question?
Yeah, just real quick. When it comes to like Evan McPherson, you said he missed an extra point, or was it a field goal? Okay.
I think it was an extra point.
So when he missed it, because coming to think of it now, I know we talked about Baltimore earlier in the show, and I'm kind of going to go back to that. One of the stat lines right now with Justin Tucker is he's actually been missing field goals in his last, when it's 50-plus yard field goals, he's 1 for 7. And one of the field goals that he missed in the game was from 50-plus yards, and they lost by a field goal. And you guys lost by what, 1 point?
1 point.
And that is almost about the same that they lost by in Baltimore. It was 3. So I just wanted to know, like, would you put the blame on Evan McPherson? Because if that would have changed, then you wouldn't have went for 2 and everything would have been different? Or like, who do you, I know you said you have some people to blame, but like, who is your front runner of blame?
My front runner of blame for us losing would have to be Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase.
Okay.
Because they're the leaders on the team, and Joe fumbled, and there were points that way. And then Jamar has to stay in control. And I know there's contract stuff and all that going on, but you're a professional on the field. Again, I don't know what the ref said to him. There's all this speculation, but you cannot give the Chiefs 15, 20 yards off of penalties because you got upset. That can't happen. Evan McPherson's PAT miss, I think the Chiefs went for 2 later on and didn't get it, and so it didn't really matter. I think there was a wash on that. Okay. I could be wrong, but I think that's what happened. Someone who played phenomenal, though, that is not going to get enough credit, Trey Hendrickson. Trey Hendrickson has now gotten 2 left tackles benched because they keep holding him and creating penalties. And Kingsley Sumanatra, he's a rookie left tackle that the Chiefs drafted. He got benched because he kept holding Trey Hendrickson, and Trey Hendrickson had a great game. He's not going to get enough credit. Again, that's something else we'll look at. Didn't have a ton of production stat line wise for the Bengals against Patrick Mahomes, but Patrick Mahomes definitely felt his presence, and that O-line definitely suffered. Another guy, real quick, because I do want to talk about Bryce Young and I want to talk about Tua, but
that's fine.
Eric All looked phenomenal, and something I love that the Bengals did was they came out very early on, 2 tight ends out there. Drew Sample getting catches early, almost fumbled, gave me a heart attack, but Eric All just stood up George Karlaftis on a couple plays, which George Karlaftis is a great rusher that the Chiefs have. Eric All stood him up. Eric All is getting receptions. Eric All, he is not someone that I was super high on coming into this because of his injury history. But if this man could stay healthy, he could easily be the greatest Bengals tight end of all time. And Tanner McLaughlin also still looks promising. I don't know why Tanner Hudson is on the active roster. It makes me mad. He didn't even play, but put Tanner McLaughlin out there. Get Tanner Hudson out of here. I'll talk about that more in like its own video. That'll come later this week. I want to do some research on Lawrence Guy before I preview that game against the Commanders that the Bengals should win. because they've already outplayed the Chiefs, even if they did still lose. Moving on.
Yes. Well, hey, you know what? This is good, though. We had a lot of football to talk about when it came to 1-4, 25 games this week. So that's always a fun time.
Tua Tagovailoa. And me and you didn't really talk about Thursday Night Football because Stan and I talked about it.
You guys highlighted the,
Bills, Dolphins. Stan and I both said we thought the Bills were going to win that game because in the moment you want Josh Allen. Josh Allen is more mentally able to put the team on his back than Tua is. And that is kind of what we saw. But we also saw James Cook just have an absolute stunner of a game on Thursday Night Football. However, the sad part was Tua Tagovailoa got injured, had another concussion. People are saying he maybe should retire. There's a former player saying he should retire. He's saying it sounds like he's not planning on retiring. But Mike McDaniel, I've loved Mike McDaniel. I have applauded Mike McDaniel so much. But he is just such a good dude. And you can just see that in this moment that the NFL, you could very easily he could have stood on the sideline and been like, okay, Skylar Thompson, you're up next man up. And I don't think anyone would have batted an eye. But he was over there with Tua. He was talking to him. He kissed him on the forehead, and he was like, we're going to figure this out, buddy. Go spend time with your family. I love that. I thought that was great. I love the humanity that we saw from Mike McDaniel. Tua did get put on IR officially today, so the earliest he can return is against the Arizona Cardinals in Week 8. I don't know if Tua will return then. He might. I could honestly see Mike McDaniel saying, wait, take your time, don't rush into anything, especially now that they just signed Tyler Huntley. But what do you think? Do you think Tua should retire? Do you think this is just the end? I don't think anyone wants to see Tua retire, but is that the answer?
The thing is one of the things that I think already they mentioned, I don't remember if it was Ian Rappaport or somebody mentioned it, but they mentioned briefly that Tua has he's not planning on it, more or less. He's not implying that he will. He has no plans to. He's just going to continue rolling forth. And look, I mean, the thing is when it comes to concussions and stuff like that, you can always say, well, one's not going to hurt you, a couple aren't going to hurt you and stuff, because obviously it's a part of the game. I mean, a lot of guys get concussions constantly. I mean, and that comes with a lot of sports. I mean, you can talk about it being hockey and football. A lot of concussions happen. And when it came to Tua's situation, though, I feel like it's a little bit different. I feel like in the circumstance of with Tua, he's had two circumstances where he's gotten thrown to the ground and hit on his head, and he's thrown up his hands and done weird things with them where they've been concerning. I mean, I think the one might have been against the Bengals in 2022, where he got thrown to the ground, and it wasn't meant to be. And like, I'm not saying it was the player's fault, because it wasn't, but the way that he threw him down, it just happened to be that Tua fell on his head, and Tua started like pushing his fingers inside, and it almost looked like he was like going into some sort of cardiac arrest. It was kind of scary if you were watching that live, and like his fingers just kind of like curled up, and that was the first concussion. And now you have this one where he falls on his head again. Ironically enough, it was by Damar Hamlin, which is a wild thing that they've talked about, where Damar Hamlin ended up doing the tackle, and only a year or two ago, he was in a situation where he was on the ground in a circumstance. But Tua fell to the ground again, and he put his hand up and started going like this, almost like he didn't know if he was like feeling like if he could feel anything. And I mean, obviously I don't know what Tua's going through. I don't know how he's feeling. He might feel a lot better than we think, but the way that he's fallen twice, these look like really bad concussions. And at a point you kind of have to know like what is best for my future. And I know Tua's young, but we've seen players that not even necessarily now. I mean, you could say Antonio Brown. I mean, he is king of CTE, but you don't want to risk your health for the greater good of the sport. You already have millions of dollars that you can invest in if you want to step away. I mean, Andrew Luck was young in his career and he had to step away. He just knew when is when. And I think in this situation, I I would play it safe with Tua, and I would tell him to call it. I know he's not planning on calling it, but I think that to an extent there's going to be that one hit that's just gonna just screw him up for life, or screw him up down the road in like 15 years. That's just not going to be good. And obviously, I hope that's not the case for him, because I really like Tua, and I think that would be really detrimental. I mean, I really liked Antonio Brown, but he was never the same after that perfect hit. And I mean, I'm not saying necessarily it was. I mean, I'm sure it was a lot of buildups of concussions, but it's always that one concussion that kind of screws you up forever. And it might not be necessarily him being a crazy maniac like Antonio Brown tends to be sometimes on Twitter, but it still could really just mess up any sort of thing. I mean, you could get ALS from certain head injuries, and as well as many other different health related circumstances. So I think he should call it, but if not, I think they should wait longer than the IR. I think he should have been on long-term IR. I think he should have been at least waiting until the end of the season.
Yeah, so Tua, if he does get medically retired by doctors, then he does keep all of his guarantees. If he doesn't get medically retired but does decide to retire, the team can ask for those guarantees back. So that's something to keep an eye on contract-wise. Something that Kylan Granson said he's been a huge advocate of the Guardian caps, was when people were saying, oh, the Guardian caps look stupid, which I'm not sure that there's any quarterback in the league currently wearing one. Tua would be a great option to start wearing a Guardian cap. But Kylan Granson, he said, look, I want to play football, but I also want to remember my daughter's wedding day when I'm older. And if looking stupid, which I don't think they look that dumb, half the time I don't even notice that they're wearing them unless there's a close-up shot. If looking dumb for during a football game, it means I can remember that wedding day or remember those family memories, then that's fine. That's more important to me. And so Tua, like, again, I'm not rooting for him to retire because I don't want to see him or I think he's bad or anything like that. I just want Tua to sit back and really talk about this with his family and think about what does he want beyond football. Because realistically, let's say he has like an Aaron Rodgers, Peyton Manning type career. He'll retire around the age of 40. You got 40 more years of life after that, beyond football, with family, with other business ventures. Who knows what the future holds for Tua? But you want to be able to remember that.
Yeah,
and I love football, but it's a sad reality with some of these players. I mean, Chandler Jones is another one with bad CTE issues, who says he doesn't, but I hope Tua really does sit down and consider this with his family. It's a difficult decision for sure. I can't even imagine, because you've dedicated 20 some years to getting to this point in the NFL, and now you're struggling with that. But 3 diagnosed concussions in 3 years is rough. 2 of them back to back in the same season. Yeah. So we'll see. I just hope he sits down and makes the right decision for himself and his family.
Yeah. And I mean, and just real quick, like, I mean, it's kind of an interesting spot that I even want to bring up too. I mean, Kenny Pickett, I know we don't talk about him too much on the show now because he's back up in Philly, but I sometimes get concerned with how many head injuries he's had in his career, because he had concussions at Pitt and he had like 3 to 4 concussions in one season in 2024. Some were more worse than others, but still, point being is you still want to have some sort of concern. And I mean, and maybe it's good that Kenny Pickett's a backup this year, because maybe he'll actually be able to give his head a rest. So sometimes you just need that rest, and I think Tua might need that rest.
Speaking of the Eagles, they absolutely sold last night. Piper picked the Falcons to win, and I was like, yeah. But Kirko Chains came out, 2 minute drill. Jesse Bates sealed the deal. That was a game. That was a good final game right there. Darnell Mooney hadn't done much the entire game, but that final route that he ran, that
I know.
Route,
yeah, I saw it.
I think it was put Quinion Mitchell on skates, man. That was beautiful for the Falcons. but we don't need to go into that too far. Let's talk about Bryce Young.
Yeah.
Bryce Young, former number 1 overall pick. The Panthers traded like everything to get this man. Picks that the Chicago Bears have turned into Tyreek Stevenson, Darnell Wright, Caleb Williams. They still have a second-round pick in this draft, and they got DJ Moore. And now he's getting benched. I don't know if this came from Dave Canales or if this came from David Tepper, the Panthers owner, who seems very impatient. But Bryce Young, I've never been super high on Bryce Young as a prospect. I think he fell into that quarterback mold that a lot of Alabama quarterbacks get put into, where they're like this elite prospect just because they went to Alabama. Mac Jones, Tua, and Jalen Hurts, which ironically, Jalen Hurts is probably the most successful and out of those three, and Jalen Hurts was taken in the second round. He was the only one of those three taken in the second round.
Mm-hmm.
Bryce Young, I think he looks lost out there. He doesn't have the physical attributes. I don't know if the speed of the game isn't keeping up with him, but somehow Andy Dalton always finds a way to play the Bengals. And week 4, the Cincinnati Bengals go up against Andy Dalton and the Carolina Panthers. But Bryce Young, just watching him play. And last year I said, you know what? They don't have a lot of weapons. Like I'm gonna let Bryce Young just kind of. It's his rookie year. Doesn't have a ton of weapons. There was a ton of coaching turnover, which could still be an issue. I mean, having technically, I think 3 head coaches in a matter of less than 2 seasons, that has to be super confusing when you're trying to learn the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
But now he's got Deontay Johnson. He's got Xavier Legette. He's got Adam Thielen still. They have some guys. Like none of them are like pinnacle types, but they have people you can work with.
They didn't even use Legette last week, this past game. They didn't even use him. But
I haven't watched the full game, but Bryce Young, he doesn't look like he knows that he's playing the game. Like
he looks very sad. He'll do something and then he'll be like
the ball, and he's like looking around like, why do I have this?
I don't know what is going on with him, but you might be right. It's something with some of these top picks. I don't think some of them are actually as good as they actually look. Like they might be better in college. Like, listen, Bryce Young, I'm pretty sure he won the Heisman. He did win the Heisman, if I'm not wrong. And I believe he won the Heisman in the same year that was like Kenny Pickett. So, I mean, like he wasn't going up against like some like crazy G players. Like it's not like it was last year where like Jaden Daniels was going up against McCarthy and all of these different guys and whatnot. Like this guy literally had like a Michigan running back, Kenny Pickett, and somebody else, I believe, if I'm not wrong, in one of the years.
Bryce Young won the 2021 Heisman Trophy. The finalists were Aiden Hutchinson, Kenny Pickett, and CJ Stroud.
Unreal. So it wasn't. It was all right.
He beat Stroud. Stroud was good and is good in the NFL, and it's been reported that Frank Reich and the coaching staff at the time for the Panthers wanted CJ Stroud, but David Tepper said, "No, I want Bryce Young. We traded everything for Bryce Young." And it was like, I mean, at the time, and people are gonna like look back and say, "Oh yeah, CJ Stroud was clearly the better." There was so much debate at the time about Anthony Richardson and CJ Stroud and Bryce Young and who was better.
Stroud's the best out of all of them.
We were saying none of these guys might be good. We were saying all of them might be good.
The problem
Stroud's
with
the only one who's proven anything.
I was going to say the problem with that one though was that like if you look at it, these were the quarterbacks that you had. You had Bryce Young, who was the guy coming out of Alabama that was supposedly the best, but he didn't even look like he was the best. Like he wasn't some generational quarterback. Then you had CJ Stroud coming out of Ohio State that we've already talked about Ohio State, where Ohio State hasn't produced a lot of really good quarterbacks coming out of that except for him. And then Anthony Richardson only playing, like you said, 17 games in high school or whatever, since high school or whatnot. But like he's only played a certain amount of games. Is he NFL ready. And I mean, this all makes sense. I remember us talking about this, but like Bryce Young, I like I said, the people that he beat out that year, I mean, minus Kenny Pickett, Stroud and Aiden Hutchinson easily were. I for some reason thought it was Michigan's running back. It was not Michigan's running back. It was Michigan State's defensive end. Yeah, not
Michigan's defensive end.
Yeah, that's what I said. It wasn't at Michigan State though. I don't remember. It doesn't matter.
Hutch went to Michigan. But I think this is going to happen again this year. I think any quarterback up until the guys that Nick Saban scouted leave or are just phased out due to time. I think for a long time we're going to see Alabama guys get put in this mold where it's like, and we have seen this, where they're going to be these high draft picks just because they went to Alabama, and the wide receiver talent's going to help them out. And I haven't watched a ton of Jalen Milroe, but I've already seen it with him, where everyone's talking. He's so super great first round pick, like this great first quarterback off the board. What I've seen, I haven't been super impressed by. Is he a decent quarterback? Yes, obviously he's Alabama SEC D1 quarterback, but I don't know that he's better than Quinn Ewers, who I also haven't watched a lot of, but has impressed me a lot.
Another quarterback that I want to throw out there, he actually is from Alabama. He's a transfer to Pitt. Eli Holstein is somebody you want to watch out for because dude has won Rookie of the Week 2 of 3 weeks so far, with one being ACC Rookie of the Week, and then this week I think it was just straight up Rookie of the Week. So point being is that he came from Alabama. He was a transfer because he didn't want to play under somebody that wasn't Saban. But I mean, he actually is really good. But it's going to be kind of interesting because will they print him as Pitt or will they print him as the Alabama transfer that went to Pitt? So
we all know Shooter Sanders is the number 1 overall pick. Clearly, I mean, there's no debate about that. But,
I mean, Texas. Hey, listen, Texas also is 1 first. They're ranked 1 in the nation right now. Arch Manning.
Well, after Quinn Ewers went down, got injured with 10 yards to go on my parlay. But,
I'm sorry for you.
Dude, it's been rough. I've missed multiple parlays by just that much. But yeah, I think Bryce Young got put in a role that his expectations were too high, or expectations for him were too high. Couldn't live up to them. And now the Panthers have to figure out how to adjust. Are they going to draft another quarterback this year? Is Quinn Ewers a future Carolina Panther? We'll find out, but I don't think Bryce Young is. No. I don't think Bryce Young is the future in Carolina.
Maybe it'll be Andy Dalton. NFL. He's going to be the future. I don't think Andy Dalton's the answer for that Carolina team. Just going to throw that out there. I don't think he is. I mean, we'll see, but I don't think he is.
Well, long term, no. But he might be in there. But the NFC South is good.
Saints are surprising.
Saints are really good. I haven't watched them yet to figure out what's going on other than Alvin Kamara. Yeah, it might be my guy Talise Fuagwa. Maybe he's putting it together. Falcons upset win. Again, they got.
Hey, I mean, Carolina's. Listen, NFC South could turn into the NFC South that we used to know and love back in the day. Only instead of Tampa Bay being at the bottom, it's going to be Carolina at the bottom. Because that year when it was Carolina, Atlanta, and New Orleans, that was some fun years. And then Tampa Bay would always stink it up. And this year it's going to be Carolina stinking it up, and New Orleans, Atlanta, and Tampa Bay are going to be at top, which is kind of fun though, because I like Tampa Bay. I like Tampa, and man, Carolina has not been the same since Cam Newton.
True.
Bring back Newton to Carolina.
No, they already tried that. It didn't work. We're over. So unless you have something else to say, I will go into my spiel.
Yeah. I think I'm good. I know we usually touch on what games that we're excited, what we're expecting for our teams, but I think we kind of already highlighted that. I kind of already I said it. I don't know if you highlighted how you feel with the Bengals this week or not, but other than that, I think we're straight. We're good.
For the Colts and the Bengals, run the dang ball, stop the dang run. Those are my expectations, and they can be summed up in 6 words.
And mine are for the Steelers, no penalties.
8 words.
Less penalties. That's mine. So
I did 2 teams, 8 words. So
there you go.
There we go.
Yeah. So I'm good. So, but whatever you want to do, if you want to call it, we can call it.
Okay. Thank you for listening to today's show. If you enjoyed, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. We can be found anywhere you listen to podcasts and on YouTube at No Butts Show. Our social media pages are NoButts_show on Instagram and No Butts Show on TikTok. My Twitter is Josh_Butts_2001, where I will be live tweeting the Bengals and Colts games because my emotions get the best of me. And if you would like to reach us, you can email us at bullmoosepodcast2, that's the number 2, at gmail.com. Finally, our spread shop will be in the description, so make sure to check out the merch. Once again, if you enjoyed today's show, please like, comment, subscribe, share, tell your friends, tell your parents, tell your neighbors. Until next time, go do something nice for someone.